All right then. What is the syllabus exactly that we are covering in today's lecture? Liberal approach to study the nature and characteristics of the Indian state. Okay. This is what we will be covering in today's syllabus. Okay. So if you have any doubt with respect to the word either liberal or approach or the nature and the characteristics, you could be just curious about it. But for a kind of working definition, liberal, I told you, refers to number one in our constitution, the constitutional enshrining of number one, parliamentary democracy. All right. We got it from our experience with the British rule in our country for more than 200 years. Number one is under the liberal rubric, parliamentary democracy. Along with that, what else is prominent in a liberal democracy? A framework of individual rights uh, to be adjudicated by a court through habeas corpus writs and enshrined in the constitution. So we have individual rights well protected by the provision of the separation between the judiciary and the executive and executive, parliament, and the judiciary. We have the separation of powers so that none of those institutions can combine together. For example, parliament and executive, that is the council of ministers led by the prime minister, to trample upon the rights of the individuals. Okay, because in the previous lecture, if you remember, I highlighted what is different between a Marxist approach to study the Indian state and a liberal approach to study the Indian state. In the liberal approach to study Indian state, you will see that parliamentary democracy, sometimes it is alternatively called representative democracy, indirect democracy, and procedural democracy, because we follow the procedure, no? So different names for it, but nonetheless, representative democracy refers to one and only one thing. Can you pinpoint what that one thing is? That is the idea of indirect democracy, indirect representative democracy in our country. What is indirect democracy, by the way, if you focus upon this particular thing? That is, we choose our representative, first of all, by exercising our right to vote, and then that person goes to the parliament or the state legislature to sit down in the assembly hall and to represent us. The key question that might be coming into your mind is this one, which is complex, and you will find in Sunil Khilnani. Can someone really represent other person? For example, can you really represent me, or your parliament, your representative can really be an authentic voice? Authentic, you understand, no? Without, for example, being influenced by any external factors, a particular representative from a particular constituency goes on to steadfastly and in a very authentic manner to represent the voice of the people from where he is being voted to do that job. So there is always this question about the authenticity in political philosophy of the very nature of indirect representation. If I am not in the assembly, is it proper to assume that the person who has been interested on my behalf to do that shall be totally, steadfast and authentic to the representation of my issues, my interests, and whatever I want to say. So there is this question mark, indirect democracy and indirect representation in your absence. Sometimes what you see when the legislators, as they are called, in the state legislature or parliament, they are not very well trained, by the way. No? For example, we have provisions to train our legislators in the Yale University, the public policy school, no? So that they understand what it is to be a lawmaker and to make welfare policies for people and to protect, for example, people against vagaries of market, number one, and also the constraints arising out of varying level of resource availability for different sections of the society. So authenticity is one of the problem. That is why in our country, although we do have indirect representative democracy. But if you focus, you will also find that India is the only country in the world where we have constitutional provision for direct democracy. That is, we are a mixture of direct and indirect democracy. Indirect democracy at the level of the state legislature and the parliament, that is the House of the People and the Council of the States. But we have direct democracy at the level of the Panchayati Raj institutions, for example, wherein we find the provision, if you focus, for Gram Sabha, and who constitutes Gram Sabha, by the way, that is a key question to understand. If you look at the constitution of the Gram Sabha as per the constitution, 73rd constitutional amendment, April 1993, you will find that Gram Sabha consists of everyone who is greater than the age 18 and is eligible to vote. All right. Gram Sabha is a village assembly. In the same manner, the House of the People or legislative assembly, no. But here, you need not to be elected to be a member of the Gram Sabha. Here, by the very virtue that you are a citizen of India and you have attained the age of 18 and you have the right to vote, by that very virtue, you are a member of the Gram Sabha. So that is an instance of direct democracy. So we have in our country parliamentary democracy, enshrining of individual rights in the constitution. We have representative indirect democracy in the state legislature, and we have direct democracy at the lowest tier of our political system, that is Panchayati Raj institutions. All right. So that you must keep in mind when we do the liberal approach to study Indian state. We, number one, are not critical totally of the market economy. All right. We do not reject in toto that market is obscure, market is exploitative, market is anti-working class, and market is not for majority, it's for minority. Here, market is thought to be instrumental in doing away with the feudal organization of society. Market is also considered an instrumental of modernity, and thus, even if you look at the Marxist approach, by the way, liberal and Marxist approaches, they both go together. Comparing and contrasting, you come to know the distinction between what is liberal approach and what is Marxist approach. For example, market is not totally rejected, and even in the Marxist schema of things, the title of Karl Marx's work is The Critique of Political Economy and the Capital, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, So he's constantly talking about the emancipatory potential of capitalism in doing away with the feudal relationship in a society. For example, that between the serf and the lord and the slave and the master, giving this new found freedom, referring to Adam Smith again, 1776 Wealth of Nations, wherein laissez-faire, non-interventionist state is thought to be crucial in policing the society. At the same time, Adam Smith enshrining this particular principle that individuals should be left free to their own devices so that they can be creative and they can do whatever they want, and in that process they can earn profit. So Adam Smith somewhere saying that, referring uh, to the, by the way, the example is not very good. The butcher and the goodwill. No, it's not that the butcher is doing it for some goodwill. It wants to earn the profit. All right. So all of this you have to understand. Other than that, of course, I was referring to Sunil Khilnani's book. So what do we do under liberal approach? Did you ever think about it? Not that difficult, not that complex, easy approach to understand. Here, the key word is to glorify. All right, eulogize. and to exclaim uh, the virtues of liberal democracy in the context of India. What does it mean, glorify? It means that our journey, when we started our parliamentary democracy, borrowing certain principles from French Revolution, others from American Bill of Rights, and others from the French Revolution, and so on and so forth, it simply means that whatever the skepticism, whatever the soothsayer and doom and gloom sayers during our freedom, we have been able to maintain. Of course, you will find in Sunil Khilnani this parliamentary democracy, which is actually able to channelize different kind of dissents in Indian society. For example, emerging out of our diversity, immense diversity, language, religion, caste, ethnicity, region, religion. No, so parliamentary democracy has been able to utilize that division and turn it into some kind of cohesive force in the national parliament and to unite people behind that. Sunil Khilnani's work is instructive in that sense because it highlights in the same manner, I think, the achievements of liberal democracy and above all, the educative role of liberal parliamentary democracy is very important, wherein we are taught, number one, what is the key concept in liberalism? Number one is gradualism, of course. No radical transformational change, gradual, steady change. That is liberalism. Number two, toleration for other people and other identities. One of the principles of, for example, John Locke, if you read, tolerance, he wrote on toleration, father of liberalism. So toleration becomes a key component. So when we look at our Indian society and we look at the achievement of what we have been able to finish so far after 50, 75 years of our post-independent political life, we will be hard put to think about it, and we will have to agree that we have done, if not commendable, of course, a very respectable and dignified job in preserving our democracy, number one. Number two, providing basic security of life, at least, if not of the livelihood and so on, to our people. And above all, we have been able to maintain our border, the post-colonial, the colonial border, no, the defense and security of the people. So, of course, what is missing in this story when you look at it? The liberal approach to, of course, modernization theory continuing here. All right, modernization theory is an offshoot of liberal approach to study any state around the world. All right. So, what is modernization theory? Same you will find in Sunil Khilnani also, where the stages of growth, for example, who is that guy? Stages of economic growth or economic development, wherein first of all you have a feudal economy, and then you have an agrarian economy, and then you go on to engage in accumulation, primitive accumulation, that is to tax the peasant and the small farmer or worker, and then you accumulate some capital. The state accumulates some capital by taxation, and then either it gives that money to a particular individual in a capitalist framework to invest and to generate industry, to establish industry, or the state itself engages in that kind of activity. For example, as was the case in India, wherein after the independence period, if you focus, we established heavy industries and so on, and it's a planned economy we followed. So, of course, when we look at how to interpret the Indian state from liberal perspective, our job must be to, number one, have a grip of the colonial experience, what principles we acquired through our interaction with the world during the colonial period, integration of Indian market in the colonial time. For example, Angus Deaton, a writer, writing that in a very famous one, a liberal one only, that in 1820s, India constituted 24% of the world GDP. All right. But now I think India is below 2%. All right. So India had its own glory. And the key and the most fundamental thing while understanding liberalism, because liberalism an offshoot of enlightenment only. In the previous lecture, also I suggested to you that liberalism is actually actively opposed to number one, tradition. All right, obscurantism, that is uh, not believing, for example, in individual rights and cloaking or uh, suppressing individual rights in the garb of, for example, tradition or culture or group rights, for example. No, so but in our constitution, this disgust within liberalism for tradition, when it was invented, when the individual was put at the center of the universe in the Enlightenment schema, it was already decided that the European period before that was a dark age. That is when the tradition and the folklore, the myth, the hearsay, obscurantism, superstition, it blotted European mind, and thus the progress of the Europe stopped for a while. So it was settled debate when Erasmus or Immanuel Kant or Hegel or Karl Marx, when they are coming, they are, of course, obviously, undoubtedly opposed to any idea of either God or tradition or culture or group right, ethnicity right, whatever it is. They have a universal scheme of understanding what a human being is. Either living under this state or living under this constitution, the individual, less or more, remains the same. So, for example, why I am highlighting it, because sometimes when we try to understand liberal democracy in a global framework, we try to conceptualize it in a relative framework. That is the liberal democratic experience, for example, in United Kingdom, and the experience of the same in India, for example, or in Sri Lanka. We find that there are differences, relativism, differences arising out of the cultural difference between the countries, and how people, for example, perceive the other person. Do they perceive them as fundamentally moral, equal individuals, having the same moral human agency, or they tend to look at them, for example, as in Africa, coming from different tribe or caste or creed or religion or language? The second tendency, that is to look at people, your fellow citizens, as coming out and identifying them on the basis of their primitive or whatever identity you want to associate with, is not productive in the liberal schema. It is thought to be an anathema, an obscurantism, and a residue of the medieval period. All right. So here in the liberal framework, although one thing which very few people, because I have done a lot of lectures on liberal approach to Indian state, one thing which very few people have been able to highlight, and the complexity of the Indian constitution lies therein, uh, is the enshrining of the individual rights and the group rights together in our Indian constitution, which is like unparalleled, and it is not practiced anywhere else. Individual rights and group rights, because they are antithetical to each other, group rights, and they are thought to be not going well together, because they are in contradiction to each other. For example, individual rights mean article right to equality, article 14, right to freedom, article 19, and right to life, article 21, and freedom from exploitation and wage labor. And other than article 25 is a provision which is thought to be a group right provision, that is right to freedom of religion, free practice, propagation of religion. No, it's a group right. And then if you go to article 28 and 29 and 30 of the Indian constitution, you will find that we have provision for preservation of minority languages and so on, which are group rights. No, so the problem which arises in the contradiction you need to highlight is this one: how can you protect, for example, if an individual goes to the court and says that I am from this community and we enjoy cultural minority rights, group rights under the constitution, and but I as an individual have been exploited by my community, and I want a redressal from the court of the that particular injustice done to me. So the court would try to strike a very hard balance, for example, between negotiating the fundamental rights attributed to the individual in the constitution, but at the same time uh, 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 trying to balance it with the group right provision in our constitution, wherein certain traditions, certain customs, certain personal laws, they are protected in the constitution. But what you have to understand, and once and for all, is the contradiction, the tussle, the fight between the group right and the individual right. Because, for example, if you give a particular community a particular right, for example, to Hindus or Muslims to have their own personal laws, we are talking about uniform civil code, isn't it? So what happens? See, caste, creed, religion, language, ethnicity, region, and so on. It is unavoidable in Indian politics. So today or tomorrow, you will be coming at it. So just refurbish whatever you are thinking, and you will be reading the idea fully consciously without ignoring the reality of it. All right. What we do in JNU, by the example, by the way, in JNU, unlike other universities around the world, you are not suggested to ignore, to not know, to let it go or be whatever it is, to delve deep into it, to go to the last layer of it and to know. Once you know about it, then probably because you are conscious about it, you sublimated that experience, no? By the sheer force of information. So the tussle between individual and group rights is a real one in our constitution. The discussion on uniform civil code is going on. The exploitation, for example, of women within the inheritance and so on, inheritance laws and personal laws, although it is in the name of the group rights, but it is antithetical to individual rights. All right. So you must understand what I'm trying to highlight. Parth Chatterjee is the only author who will, in his, I think, The Politics of the Governed book, one chapter on that particular argument that Indian state maintains the hard balance between individual liberal conception of individual rights, but at the same time pluralist conception of group rights. No, so that is unique and unparalleled in the political history of the world, wherein the same constitution protects the individual as well as the group. So these are some of the things to briefly recapture what I told you again. The liberal approach to study the nature and the characteristics of the Indian state. Nature here referring to how it is, how it appears to you. Just, unjust, socialist, welfareist. No, characteristics refers to is it serving what particular characteristics, also a chameleon-like quality, as they say. Characteristics referring to how does it change with changing circumstances. Chameleon-like characteristics. No, when I told you that the concept of state is unstable, transitory, and always in flux, I was referring to this particular thing. When something is in flux, it is changing, and as it is changing, it manifests different characteristics. So, for example, every single year from 1926 November 1949, you will see that every single year we have been traversing a different journey, and Indian state has been manifesting a different character as we move ahead. So, for example, after liberalization, we see that the character of the Indian state, at least with respect to what Indian state owes to the people. You read about Indira Gandhi in 1970s, and what was highlighted in Parth Chatterjee, that in Indira Gandhi's time, it became a settled principle that the state has a responsibility to provide for the people, especially most disadvantaged and underprivileged. No, but after 1991, this same commitment was start to be dismantled, and then the market, again a neoliberal classical economics, that is again the state coming to take the prime position as earlier. So characteristics and nature, to recapture again, I just missed it, to recapture what I just told you through right from the start. So in order to understand liberal approach to understand the characteristic of and nature of Indian state, first of all, you could go and read Sunil Khilnani, which I will be discussing throughout the week, and you will not be hurrying into it. By the way, there is no way, no other way. This graduation you are doing, and that is the most opportune time to be reading a lot of books, good ones. You have your leisure without being so careeristic and being consumed by the this careerism, rampant careerism. No, you need to go to the text, and that is what makes good career for you. So Sunil Khilnani and Atul Kohli also in the syllabus. If you just browse the syllabus, you will find these people. And other than that, of course, Ram Guha, India After Gandhi. These books are good for UPSC also. They are well read books, by the way. All right. So those preparing for competitive exams but my focus is not competitive exams. Of course, I am here to train you to think academically, to uh, analyze academically, and to produce your own observation, your own analysis of the subject matter under consideration in the class. So the other one is, of course, Jawaharlal Nehru, who is thought to be the real one, the liberal politician from India, the famous statesman, by the way, of the 1940s and 60s, along with Mahatma Gandhi and Bhimrao Ram Ji Ambedakar. These are the liberal politicians, all right, subscribing to the ideas of rights, liberty, equality, and basic dignity for everybody in the body politic. No, so we are starting with Sunil Khilnani. If you have any problem, guys, with respect to what we seek to do, yes, please. Readings. I have shared this one on the Google Classroom. You could. This is a. I don't think this is a very costly book. So if you are developing a library, guys, and if you need some contribution or anything, just let me know. Just buy that book, okay? Order that book, get that book, put it in your rack wherever it is, okay? Good book, this one. A classical book, for example, Sunil Khilnani thanking Sudipto Kaviraj, Parth Chatterjee, Ramchand Guha, connected writers, no, working together. So this is actually in the course only. Parth Chatterjee is thanking, Sudipto Kaviraj is thanking. Atul Kohli's book on the political economy side of our, for example, uh, uh, the political economy of poverty and disenfranchisement. No, Atul Kohli and Ramchand Guha, of course, the history, along with Bipan Chandra's India after independence, Ramchand Guha's India after Gandhi. He is a very lucid, good read to understand. Ramchand Guha is also thought to be a liberal, isn't it? No? So these are liberal scholars, a very selected list of liberal scholars. Okay. So Ram Guha and Jawaharlal Nehru's discovery of India, of course, you must be reading here with me. And now your job is cut for you, guys, students. Now you have to be sitting on the table with the book and reading the book with marker and whatever it is. No, most of the times you are reading the book. So first of all, you get Sunil Khilnani, write his name, Idea of India, and you get that book. And we will be discussing this book. I am on page number 43 today. Okay, and some of the terminologies and vocabulary that I introduced with respect to the liberal approach, you will find reflecting it in the reading. So you could go on about it, and but 168 pages. Our next class on Tuesday, isn't it? No, tomorrow we have a class. I'll be taking a few more pages, up to 100 probably. And Tuesday we finish this book by Tuesday. Okay. So by Tuesday, all of you one by one are requested to do the book 168 pages from end to end. Okay. Very lucid prose, good prose, not complex like Parth Chatterjee. Easygoing, lucid prose. A little bit of glorification and eulogy, as they say, of our achievement, whatever little or small in our country, but a kind of homage to the grit of Indian people to maintain democracy and to respect other people and their rights in a multicultural society, multicultural democracy. All right. So liberalism and pluralism and multiculturalism, they are associated concepts. Okay. So when you are looking at the Indian state, no, you are highlighting those provisions wherever you can magnify uh, in the official construction of the Indian state, wherever you can magnify either individualism or the rights framework or the free market or doing away, dismantling of the feudal order, that is the serf and the lord. And other than that, I think what else to be highlighted? Of course, the successful competition in the market economy. dismantling of the monopoly and so on. Okay, so I am your professor. My job is not to take any position with respect to any idea or approach or ideology, but to lay it bare in front of you so that you for yourself can make some kind of balanced understanding of what is sensible here and what is not. All right. So I think you could be reading slowly without being overwhelmed, and of course, I do honor your patience in the class. Read the book. All right. So that's all from my side for today's lecture, and I hope you enjoyed it, all of you. If you have any question, by the way, you could go on to ask, and I'm here to reply to all of you. Guys, no question at all. Nature of the Indian state. After liberalization, if we look at it, liberalization, privatization, and globalization, what we see is actually a different kind of consensus emerging with respect to state organization of production, distribution, and of goods and services and commodities. Now we allow, for example, more private power in telecommunication, in insurance, in engineering, software development, and so on. Earlier, for example, after this Steel Authority of India, Gas Authority of India Limited, NTPC, uh, and this big power plants and the IITs and IIMs and the universities was thought to be the state priority. But now I think market is dominant, aided by globalization, no, global integration of Indian economy, and now we see. A final answer to this question is very hard to give, but nonetheless, since the LPG movement in 1991 under the Prime Ministership of P.V. Narasimha Rao and the Finance Ministership of Dr. Manmohan Singh, we have been drifting away from command economy, that is state socialism, to a liberal free market, neoliberal free market economy. If I have to give answer in one phrase to your question, it is now we are a neoliberal, post-colonial, post-colonial state. All right, wherein we do serve the global capital as an appendage. For example, we will read dependency theory in politics, wherein we are thought to be, the global south is thought to be on the periphery of the global capital, and still we supply not the finished material, except South Korea, Japan, and the Asian tigers, as they call them. We still supply the raw material only, and we are not, for example, independent, even independent in defense manufacturing. So, but India has many things to be proud of, and of course, pride is not a very good thing. Reason, yes, Peter. Sorry, you have a meeting. What is the time, by the way? Hmm? So time is over. All right. So that's all from my side for today's class.